a conductive wire, and you were so electric. I had no say when you came so near, and just passed right
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back, as is Jonathan Lally and Mitchell McDonald, because today we are talking about What We Do in the Shadows, Season 1 and Season 2. So it's a bit of a follow-up from our movie episode, because these two gentlemen finally convinced me to watch the movie and then also convinced me to watch the TV show. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. You know, as great as can be. What are we going on? Like almost 4 months sheltered in place. So I'm doing fantastic. But at least What We Do in the Shadows was one of the shows that made it out of production and editing and everything before all of this happened. So I was very grateful to be able to watch that. And it's been kind of keeping me and the other few shows that are still on kind of keeping me sane. So
yeah, Mitchell, how about you? How are you holding up during quarantine?
Yep, aside from my life being like a technology related shit show right now, as you guys just found out for like the last 20 minutes. No, it's good. We're doing well. We're hanging in there. We're getting used to quarantine. Everything's reopening. Everything is doomed. It's a wacky world. We're all in it together. But no, yeah, I was going to tag what he just said about this show was one of the, I was trying to think of any other shows that I've been watching like consistently week to week during quarantine. I think this was really it pretty much. I mean, there was that whole Tiger King thing, but that was like a binge that happened that you watched in a like couple day fever dream. That first month of quarantine was just like,
over.
Lose your mind watching Tiger King, as we all did. But yeah, I think this was really one of the more consistent things, and I'm very thankful that it was kind of like a nice escape once a week. It was like, oh, it's Wednesday or Thursday, we have a new episode of What We Do in the Shadows, and I think it was like a really needed break of wackiness and silliness and nonsense, and I'm very pleased with the fact that we got to get it, because so many of the other shows, even on like FX and stuff, have been just paused or canceled or are not coming out or what have you. So it was just nice that this one was, as you said, like done and ready to go, and just they were able to air it as they intended.
Yeah, you mentioned other shows. Like I was trying to think while you were talking about it, and I was like, I guess like last week tonight I watched, but Superstore got cut by one episode. Superstore missed one episode this season, and they're going to have it for next season. And it was like they were supposed to write out like one of the biggest characters, America Ferrera. She's leaving the show, and so like that's going to happen at the beginning of next season now. And then Walking Dead as well. Walking Dead, I guess because of how they do post-production, like it, long story short, they had to make the second to last penultimate episode the end of the season, and then they're airing like a bonus episode next season, basically, as like the finale will be right before the premiere of next season.
Weird.
Yeah, but it was nice to get long story short, Deanna. It was really nice to have the show. It was really nice to have the show.
I will say I'm one of the only people apparently who did not watch Tiger King, because I elected to instead catch up on stuff, because as you both know, I had not started watching this when season 1 aired. So I had a little bit of catch up to do with the two of you, and I finally one weekend just kind of went through and watched, I don't even know, 8, 10, 12 episodes in one day or something. Got caught up to the most recent one, and I've been watching weekly for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I want to say. But I think we can dive in and discuss season 1, because the pilot episode is obviously important when you have something that is adapting something that already came out in movie form, because it's not necessarily an adaptation of the movie, but it's a continuation of this vampire mockumentary. And I think the pilot does a nice job of setting the tone for what the show is going to be like in comparison to the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like very similar, but also it's got its own voice. Like my biggest concern when I saw that it was coming out, I was like, oh no, like I don't want them to ruin the movie. And like, you know, not that the movie could ever be ruined. You know, it obviously stands on its own, but you know, I didn't want, or if it, you know, my fear was that another fear that I had was like, what if I hate it, but America loves it? You know, like the rest of America loves it and I hate it and they haven't seen the original and then they hate the original or whatever. But it really is kind of like a companion to the movie. You know, it's like a further telling of the lore.
I would say it's like an expansion of it. It's really taking that premise and then and there's always like a worry there when they're taking something and making a sequel to it, or like I would say this is like taking it and stretching and expanding it, because it is an adaptation and you can kind of see, especially in the first like episode or two and a lot of the first season, some of the jokes and gags are like kind of transplants or ripped from the movie. Especially the first episode is very, very similar, most of the gags, but it's just with slightly different characters. And you can kind of see how at the beginning, sort of like the Nandor character is similar to, I forget what Taika Waititi's character is.
Taika Waititi's character, yeah.
So Nandor is kind of
like Googling it right now.
Yeah, Nandor is kind of like a take of a little bit of a change from Taika's character, and then Laszlo is sort of a take of Jermaine's character from the movie, and then there's also
Vladislav the Poker.
Vladislav. That's right.
Vladislav the Poker.
And Viago.
And then the show introduces the female vampire, Nadja, and also Colin Robinson, the energy vampire, and Guillermo, the familiar to Nandor. And I think that those are I think the three of them, especially going into the second season, I think Nadja and Guillermo are my two favorite characters. I don't know if we were going to talk about favorite characters yet, but Nadja and Guillermo, I think, are my two favorite characters.
I love Guillermo. I think Guillermo's great. I feel like, and he's very similar to the woman who played the familiar in the film, where they kind of, at some point, they've kind of had it with them, but it's like this back and forth where it's like, yeah, sometimes I get annoyed with them, but then sometimes they're like, you know, waiting on them hand and foot. And it's hard for me. I will say this too, like, you know, that's one thing that we should mention, that like obviously energy vampire was not something that was in the movie. And when I'll admit, like when they introduced the character, I was like, this is stupid. It's like, this is stupid. And ironically enough, like, he goes on to be one of my favorite characters in the show. He's so funny. Like, especially, they gave him so much more to do in second season. But in first season, like the episode with, you know, they have so many great cameos in both seasons. But there was an episode where he has a girlfriend, and I forget her name. She's on SNL, and
Vanessa Bayer.
Vanessa Bayer. She's so funny. I love that episode. That was so great. Like, you know, they really made that character surprising for me. I was not expecting to enjoy that, and I didn't really. I think I saw like a very brief commercial for the show before it started, and I was like, oh, I wanted to hate it so much, but then I knew that he was involved with it, and I didn't know to like what extent. And then, you know, obviously we could talk about it a little bit more going forward, but like we've talked about whether it's an extension, but we can definitely say without a doubt it's in the same universe as the film.
Well, yeah, because characters from it show
right.
up.
No, I'm just saying we can talk about that later. Like, I'm just saying, you know, what it ultimately is, you know, in the same universe. And I've like knowing that made me like it a lot more. You know, it's not trying to overwrite what happened in the movie.
A bunch of the episodes in the first season are directed by Taika and Jermaine. Jermaine is the showrunner on the show, so it's really his show. So he is completely in charge of it, and he obviously has done Flight of the Conchords, has done several movies, has done the original movie for this, and he is I was thinking about it, and he's probably one of the people outside of like the Lonely Island and a lot of like the SNL people from when I was really into watching SNL, probably one of the people that like over the span of my life has made me laugh the most.
Yeah.
You know, just like delivered like the most joy to me.
Yeah. Even the stuff he's not in, even the stuff that he's just like has a hand in. And, you know, he's very talented. And I didn't realize he was the showrunner on this. For some reason, I thought it was Taika. But yeah, that makes sense since they were so, you know, I think they both co-directed the movie. So
but it's his show. Taika directed a couple episodes of the first season, and I don't think any in the second season. I don't even know if he's in the second season at all.
He's not in it. We only got
Jermaine was in the,
we got
the
Jermaine
finale.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, yeah, you're right. It definitely borrows a bunch from the movie in certain like terms of tone and like some of the gags at the beginning, but it really quickly grew into its own thing. There was there's particularly like an episode in season 2 that where they're getting the mailer demon contacting them, and they feel like they have I felt like that was one of the greatest things ever. I thought that was so funny.
I agree. The chain email episode is incredible, and it's just such a good, like, I feel like the second season, so we're kind of, I don't know what,
jumping all over the place, I apologize.
But I feel like the first season is very much them kind of exploring like the world of these vampires, and then I feel like the second season is kind of them exploring like outward of that, like it's exploring a lot of like other types of like mythical creatures, magical creatures. Kind of like what Rick and Morty is doing this season, where they kind of just have this is a stupid idea that's going to be the premise for this entire episode. So there's the episode, with the Super Bowl party, they go to a Super Bowl party, or there's an episode where with the chain email, where chain emails were a thing like 15 years ago, and they get one and they're all so stupid that it freaks them out. Or,
that's right, because he's like reading his old email.
It's like not a current email. It's like he's checking his email for the first time, or like the second time ever, and he has a chain letter, and it scares the shit out of him. It's so funny, and it's such a good premise for an episode that kind of just writes itself. Yeah, that episode, there was like a run of that episode into the episode where Colin Robinson gets a promotion at his work and becomes outrageously powerful and goes mad with power. And then the episode after that is where Mark Hamill is trying to kill Laszlo, and so Laszlo reinvents himself. By going to Pennsylvania.
Amazing, and they had. We should mention that had the girl from Californication, the daughter from Californication, was like the girl that worked at the bar with him.
He has like a romantic fling with her.
Yeah, I mean the cameo.
That episode, every joke was so good. So at the end, he reinvents himself as a bartender in Pennsylvania, because it sounds like Transylvania.
What was his name?
His character's name is Jackie Daytona.
Oh my God.
And his disguise is like a vest and a toothpick, and the toothpick is the thing that makes him disguise to everybody. Like Mark Hamill's character comes in on the hunt for him later and doesn't recognize him until he takes the toothpick out. Is an incredible joke.
I didn't even know it was Mark Hamill until after. I had to look at the credits. I didn't realize because like the makeup on that show,
they made him look totally different for sure. And then it's like the toothpick was his Clark Kent glasses.
Yeah, it was so funny. Yeah, exactly. It was the Clark Kent glasses. Exactly. Jackie Daytona. Did you have any favorite moments from like any standout moments for you, Deanna, about like the first or second season?
It's funny because you mentioned Colin Robinson, and I could not stand him for a good majority of season 1, like the office scenes. I was just so disinterested in the office scenes where it was just so drab and he was draining everyone's energy. And I think his character really picked up for me in season 2 because, like you guys said, season 1 was more about getting to know the characters and just kind of keeping things a little more within the house and Colin's workplace. And then season 2 kind of expanded. Guillermo started to leave. And I think it was really funny when he leaves and he goes to this other house that's full of, these familiars that are going to be turned into vampires soon. And it turns out it was a familiar who was tricking all of them and just wearing fake vampire teeth. And you see the girls who come home who are the vampires, and they just look like these bratty rich kids.
What's his face? Nick Kroll's character.
Nick Kroll's character shows up in both seasons.
Yeah.
Both
seasons. He has a vampire posse that's very funny.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think that I could actively feel like the first season I enjoyed, but I actually watched a couple episodes as they were coming out, but then kind of left it and then binged it like towards, I think it was like around when we recorded that first episode of the podcast, but I binged the first season and I was like, okay, this is good. And then the second season, I feel like I could actively feel that they had like figured out the role of each character in the show. And it was really, especially that 3-episode run that I just mentioned, I was like, oh my God, this show is absolutely on fire.
Oh God, that show's so good.
Yeah, they really just figured out like how to deliver they had like really good premises and then could craft just whole episodes over I feel like, take for instance the Jackie Daytona episode. I feel like Laszlo runs away and reinvents himself as a bartender I feel like that would in normal shows be like a cutaway or like a C plot, I truly feel like that would not warrant a full episode, but in this show they follow their instincts towards total stupidity. And
the season, it's weird. It felt like season 2 right from the get-go was more absurd than the first. I'll never forget right at the beginning of the first episode where Guillermo's they're doing the montage of him killing all the vampires that are coming to get them because of how they left last season. I was just like, what is happening? And he's like the vampire slayer. And you're just like, this is it's even more ridiculous than some of the stuff in the movie. But then you remember that scene in the movie where they're having the fight and they're the police officers come over and they have him under the spell and they don't see him. It's similar to that. It's very, it would not work in every other show, but for this, it's just the absurdity of it all is what makes it so funny.
I think Guillermo was my standout character from this season because I think his performance is just so good, because when he has to, it's such a weird line that his character has to walk, because he's Laszlo's slave no, not Laszlo. He's Nandor's slave basically, but he's also doesn't have to do it, but wants to do it. Willing but also slave. It's Nandor has power over him that is very unclear, that is very Guillermo is only here because he wants to be, but also he is their slave. But then also when he's having to kill all these vampires, he's not only doing it secretly behind the household's backs virtually, so he'll be killing them and the other vampires are so stupid that they don't even notice that it's happening, and they're just Guillermo, you're such an idiot, and he's successfully murdering all these people trying to kill them. But he's also very he doesn't want to be killing them, so he's I'm sorry, he's and he's just so good at doing them. He's wacha, I'm so sorry,
he's accidentally doing it. I mean, that's the way that we found out. I really did also love the way they revealed it at the end of season 1, because it's at first you're oh, he's just a bounding idiot and he opened the door and crisped the vampire, I think he only kills one vampire in the first season, right?
He kills the Baron. There's an episode with the Baron where they're hanging out with the Baron, and they're really scared that the Baron is gonna this old famous vampire is going to die because they're going on all these goofy escapades in New York. And then they make it through the night and they get home, and then Guillermo opens the door and it's the crack of dawn and the light destroys this ancient vampire.
And before that, weren't they in a fight and he fell down the stairs and they're oh, it's great, you're okay, thank God. And then Guillermo busts open the door and burns him to a crisp. And it was that was very similar to the movie where they find Peter. Like it's just like
kind of a
it's
similar
definitely-
character.
but it was like it was like cheerfully redone in a funny way, and kind of like pulled in the opposite direction. But yes, I would agree. I think Guillermo is one of the most talented people on the show, and like also it's funny because we were talking about Colin Robinson. Guillermo's character, the actor who plays him, is billed right before Colin Robinson in the credits.
I would say he definitely gets more to do. Like Colin is very much like a background character.
He is absolutely. He's like the regular at the bar who lives, and even it's like hilarious because he lives in like the basement. I mean,
right.
It's like and I think like it's almost like it's like who's got it worse, Guillermo or Colin Robinson? But Colin, I think like you said, they've given him more to do in season 2, and like I always really like when he plays jokes on them. Like he's kind of gotten to this point where he gets sick of them, but then also like he likes to troll them, and he
likes to troll them, but he also he has like a very strange relation because they like hate him, but they also like are his friends, and
roommates,
and he drains them. Like he has power over them. He can gain energy from them. So he likes to play jokes on them because he is also like much more modern. They don't really go into his like origins at all. They just kind of say, he's obviously a much more modern vampire because the three of them are like old timey vampires, and he is like a normal, boring office guy.
Deanna, do you like? Are there any particular like cameos or like episodes that stood out to you over the 2 seasons?
Obviously, you have the, big sort of dungeon scene where you get like 20 cameos in one episode. So you have Wesley Snipes, you have Danny Trejo, you have Tilda Swinton, and you're just like, okay, the fact that they got Blade to make a cameo, like that's just so good.
I didn't even remember how many they had, and we watched, and it was like, holy shit, they have Blade, and they had the girl from True Blood, right?
They have Evan Rachel Wood, Tilda Swinton, the 3 guys from the original movie, Paul Rubens, Pee-wee.
Yes.
A lot of people in that episode.
Could you imagine being on set that day?
I don't think that all of them were were in the same place, because the way that it is filmed seems like they kind of were all in their own rooms, but it's still very fun that they got those people.
Yeah, absolutely. The Blade was a nice touch.
Yeah, that Wesley Snipes is Skyping in is very funny. Yeah, that episode. Oh, and Batista's in that episode too. He's like he's like sitting in the dungeon, and
Batista's in that.
Yeah, he's sitting in the dungeon in the room before they go in there.
Oh yeah. When they're in the waiting room.
Yeah, he's in the waiting room for the council. Wow. Yeah, that's right.
That's a huge one.
Fun app, very fun app. We love. Yeah, but they've had a lot of really good guest stars. I mean, the Mark Hamill one obviously was really good.
I like the Craig Robinson episodes too.
The Craig Robinson, where he gets a promotion episode, it really leveled up his character literally, and like for me as they know, because you guys are
a club of like the people that are vampire hunters, right? Like that was the whole.
Yeah. Sorry, the actor Craig Robinson. Right. Sorry, Mitchell.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Craig Robinson, Colin Robinson. I got confused.
Yeah, no, I she said Colin Robinson, but yeah, he was in like 1 or 2 episodes, right? Like they were doing like the vampire hunters.
Yeah.
Yes. They go to that house and they kill that family of vampires. Guillermo has to kill them unwillingly. Guillermo's like, I have to kill all these people.
And then you find out Guillermo's good with all these different weapons, and you're just like, what? Okay.
It just is completely innate to him. It's great. I think just the second season was really a show hitting its stride in a really good way. I also wanted to touch on my favorite of like the classical vampires. I think Nadja is a really great character. I think just like pretty much every, like, I think my least favorite character is probably Nandor. I feel like they only in parts of season 2 have figured out what to do with him, because he's kind of he's kind of doing a Taika Waititi thing, but he's also not.
Yeah.
And I feel like he gets the least to do that is like he's almost the straight man, but he's also an idiot.
Yeah.
So it's.
I mean, they're all idiots, but that's
they're all total idiots. That is a good point of the show.
People, even Guillermo, in a way, is like an idiot.
But Matt Berry is obviously a very established English comedian. He's been on a ton of different shows. He's on the IT Crowd. If you guys have probably seen that show, you probably like that show.
Is that who else is in that show? It's like Richard
Ayoade and Chris O'Dowd.
Yes.
And I forget.
There's a woman on the show.
I forget Jen's name, but she's also great. That show is incredible.
I've seen
but yeah,
like bits of it. Absolutely.
Oh, it's so good. You would love it. It's also very stupid and workplacey. But yeah, you guys should all watch the IT Crowd. It's great.
That's the next episode, Deanna. You heard it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to do an IT Crowd episode.
I don't know how many seasons. I think it only had like 1 or 2 seasons. It was like short.
It has 4, but it's English, so they're like 6 episodes.
Oh yeah.
So you could like knock it out pretty quickly.
So he's on that show. Matt Berry's.
He's on that show, and he basically kind of does the exact same shtick. Basically, he's like a total doofus, a total like horny buffoon with an accent that makes him sound civilized, but he's a total crazy person, idiot. On that show, he's a little bit more heightened than I feel like he kind of fits in here very well. But I feel like he's doing that. And then I feel like every line that they give Nadja she's kind of like the most normal, smartest vampire of them, but also is an absolute fool and is like her character sometimes is plays up like the disgust of the rest at how stupid the rest of them are, even though she really isn't that much smarter than it. But I would think a good example, I think the best example of that is Laszlo has in the episode, especially in the episodes with Nick Kroll, has this horrible hat that is very obviously cursed. It's like a witch's hat.
God, yes.
That whenever he wears it, he is basically killed. He basically like immediate misfortune befalls him, and he gets like hit by a car, or furniture falls on him, or he ignites, or just all these.
But don't things around these ridiculous
him
as well, like to other.
Yeah, just like horror. This obviously cursed hat, and he loves the hat, and she cannot stand the hat, and she is so indignant and so upset that he has this hat. And then that joke goes even further, because in those episodes, Nick Kroll plays a vampire character who is obsessed with forming these ridiculous plots to steal Laszlo's hat, which is cursed. So Nadja's like, just give him the hat. And Laszlo's like, no, it's not. And it's just it's very good. That was one of my favorites. She also in this season, I don't know if this quite worked, but there's an episode where they all have ghosts of their like former selves that they like talk to and hang out with, and she ends up putting hers in a like creepy doll version of herself that then just becomes a character on the show that she just like hangs out with and talks to. But I love Nadja. I think my friend Mick, who I was watching most of the season with, pointed out like it really feels like she is a very established comedic actress in Britain who is getting to shine on like a national stage and is absolutely killing it.
And they all sound, I watched like a red carpet interview with them on like from South by Southwest last year, and I think it was like the show was about to premiere, and I was expecting at least one of them to be faking an accent on the show, but they all sound like that. They all sound just like their characters. That is their real voices for the most part.
Yes. Matt Berry, definitely. Nadja, that makes sense. And I'm not really familiar with the actor who plays Nandor. I've never seen him before, so that also tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna find it and send it to you. But if I recall correctly, they all basically sounded the same, and I was very surprised. I thought at least one of them would be like faking. It'd be hilarious if like Colin Robinson is like British or something. It's like the one that isn't. But no, it's funny.
That guy, it's actually interesting. So the way he gained like fame, I guess, if you could call it that, but he did this thing. The way he gained notoriety, that actor, his name is Mark Prokesh.
I've definitely seen him in something.
So he did this thing, and you guys should absolutely, I probably should have sent this to you before to look up, so before we were recorded this, but he did this thing where he called himself K. Strauss, and he was pretended to be a yo-yo. Like, you know how like when you were in like elementary school or whatever, like on TV, there would be like yo-yo masters or like guys who like knew a ton of yo-yo tricks who would like sell yo-yos like at your school.
Yeah.
And he like there would be like an assembly and there would be like a yo-yo guy that would come by. So he did this fake character where he would trick local news stations by telling them that he was a professional like yo-yo motivational guy. And then he would go on and he would just like bullshit as long as he could possibly go before they would be like, okay, show us your yo-yo tricks. And then he didn't know any yo-yo tricks. So he would just try to perform them and fail miserably and make the local news team look like idiots. And he did this so many times. There's a very long YouTube video of just like all of these clips of him doing this over and over. It's like profoundly hilarious. And it is such a good bit. And so he did that before he was an actor, and now he's an actor on this show. But yeah, I highly encourage anybody that's a fan of the show to look him up because it is very good.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to check it out. I want to see all of the stuff that they're doing on the side from this because I've really enjoyed watching them in the show for sure.
Yeah. Nadja, the actress, I don't know what else she's done, but she currently is hosting a show that is on Netflix right now that is a real show that is called The Big Flower Fight, which is if either of you have watched Great British Bake Off, it is that, but for giant garden topiaries. So it is a competition show where a bunch of these pairs of florists, I guess. I don't even know what to call them. This is such a strange premise for a show. It's like a competition show where they're given a certain amount of time and they all have to make the first episode that we watched was like a giant bug out of flowers and grass. And it is like like parade floats kind of, I guess would be like the closest thing. I don't know. But that is a show that is on Netflix and it is hosted by her. So you guys can go check that out if that sounds fun to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna check out. I mean, I'll check out something from each of them for sure.
Yeah. I think
I'm just trying to think. Is there anything else? I'm trying to think of what else there is to cover. Deanna, you probably have some nuggets stored away.
I mean, I feel like we can't not talk about Beanie Feldstein being in this.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I'm
yeah.
glad you mentioned that. I was just about to bring her up. I was hoping that we'd see her this season in the new season. I don't think she was in the second season at all.
No, she wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, she had like a little arc in the first season that kind of. She had a nice like
and
side arc.
We got her roommate. Kind of.
That's true. Her roommate shows up in the Vampire Hunter support group.
Yeah, and they showed like a flashback of her. So it's not like, they probably will bring her back. I would like to see them bring her back in third season.
Yeah, she plays a character that is a virgin LARPer who they bring in because in the first, more in the first season than the second season, the vampires are obsessed with feasting on virgins. So they go to a LARP group, and she accidentally Nadja takes pity on her and turns her into a vampire. And then there's a very fun episode where Nadja is like
she like grooms her.
Yeah, like taking her under her wing and like showing her how to be a vampire. And it turns out that she has like this special power of invisibility. And then she turns into like this horrible, malformed CGI bat creature because she's learning how to morph into bats, which is very funny.
Yeah, I love Beanie Feldstein.
She's really she's probably like very busy since the first season was shot.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I know we've talked about. I don't know if Deanna, if you ever got around to watching Booksmart. I think we talked about.
Yes, loved it.
Booksmart, I consider one of like the most underappreciated films that year it came out. I was
Yeah,
so disappointed that didn't get more love, but she just killed it in that movie. She's so good. Movie.
She's also going to be playing Monica Lewinsky in the upcoming season of American Crime Story.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love it.
I've never watched. I don't like Ryan Murphy stuff, but that does sound very fun.
The only one I've watched from him was I only watched the OJ one. He did the OJ one, right?
Yeah, it was OJ season 1, Versace season 2, and I think this is going to be season 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah, I didn't watch Versace. I heard Versace was my mom liked that one. She talked about that one. But
Ryan Murphy is also.
So I'd like her back.
Ryan Murphy also did American Horror Story, Glee, I think The Politician, and that new show Hollywood.
I think he does Pose now.
Oh yeah, he was part of. He does a lot of stuff. But yeah, she's great in it. Her star has really risen since the first season, I would say. But yeah.
Also, Lady Bird. She was in Lady Bird. She was great.
Tremendous in Lady Bird. Yeah, Booksmart. Absolute must watch if you haven't seen it. It's one of the best comedies.
And I like that she's done her thing. I like that she's done her thing without, because people are just starting to piece it together that she's Jonah Hill's sister somehow.
Right.
Like, I didn't realize that until I looked it up.
Same.
Maybe about a year ago. And it was like, but, obviously they're going, I forget which one of them is using a different name or their middle name, but, one of them is not using their real last name.
I think Jonah Hill.
Yeah. I forget what. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I think because I think that's their actual last name.
Jonah Feldstein, I guess that makes. I feel bad for her because like when Booksmart came out, there were all like a lot of people, myself included. Like I said, my description was like, it was like you took Lady Bird and Superbad and tossed them in a blender, but. I think I was watching them describe it and she's like, yeah, but it's also its own thing. Like you could tell that like, people are probably comparing it and it really is its own thing. Like, Superbad, it's its own thing, but Booksmart is just as good, if not in ways better than Superbad for me. And
I like it more.
Yeah. It's like, Superbad, like a lot of it is like, don't get me wrong, it's a great film, but like, I don't know how much of that I would feel good laughing at today.
Yeah. I think it's great for what it is, yeah.
Yeah, most of it is fine. But I feel like, with Booksmart, it was like very smart humor, didn't need a ton of cursing or like dirtiness to be funny. But yeah, she was so good in that. I was so glad that she that had a part in the show. And I don't know if you had like, I'm curious to hear like if you could pick 3 people you'd like to see cameo on the show. Like I've got a list in my head. For sure. I'm curious, like, off the top of your head, maybe not 3 if you can't think of 3, but like maybe 1 or 2. Like I would love to see someone like Sandler for some reason. I don't know
Sandler.
Why. I think he's just like, he's on like, this huge kick right now. I don't know why.
Sandler could be good. Yeah.
Could be good. He could be good because he's played a vampire before. He's played a vampire in a cartoon.
That's true. He also was in Little Nicky.
I'm not saying that he's like necessary, but I just like, after seeing Uncut Gems, I would love to see him just like try all sorts of different things. I'd love to see him do it. And like, he can be funny in other people's stuff. His own stuff is always questionable. It's like hit or miss, like his old stuff for sure. But yeah, I mean, I could think of a few other people, sure.
I would say, obviously, like the Lonely Island guys, if any of them were ever associated with the show, that would be great. Also, like maybe Mulaney would be good on it, just because I've seen him. There's a show called Difficult People. Did either of you guys watch Difficult People? I'm guessing not. But
I feel like I watched an episode. I don't remember what the premise is, but I remember like at least seeing a trailer or something for it.
Difficult People is another very, very New York gay, like 30-something show where it's Billy Eichner and Julie Klausner, and they're just
yes, yes, I did.
But
see that
There's an episode of that where Mulaney plays an old-timey person who rides like a bike with like the big wheel at the front and the small wheel in the back, and it is very good.
That just screams Mulaney when I think of him for some reason. I don't know why.
There's also, I would say, one of my other favorite shows that I would really love to get you guys to watch and talk about. Actually, I'll go into two of my other favorite shows and then I'll drop it. One is called Corporate. If either of you guys watched Corporate, these are both Comedy Central shows. Corporate is like a hyper stylized like show about like the soullessness of like corporate office culture.
Okay.
So it's kind of like playing off of like similar to like the Colin Robinson episodes of the show, but it's like even darker and even more depressing.
Like Deanna will love it then, because that was her favorite.
It's really, really. It's like exactly like the Crosshairs of like my humor. It's like very like grim, depressing. Like it's really good.
What's the other one?
But the guys from that show are great. Jake Weissman is one of my favorite comedians. He's one of the leads. Him and Matt Ingebretson are on that show, and I love that show. And then the other show is called Review, which is another Comedy Central show that is about a character named Forrest McNeil, who is played by a comedian named Andy Daly, who would probably also be I would say would be one of the other people who I would want to see on What We Do in the Shadows. But basically, he plays this guy named Forrest McNeil who hosts a show called Review, where he is tasked with giving reviews to life experiences. And it's basically how he goes to do frequently. It's like things that are very grim or dark, and it's how it's the show about him doing these horrible things and also how they ruin his life. So it's very good. I really suggest. It's kind of like it's kind of like this, where it's also like a mockumentary, where it's like a TV crew is following him as he goes on these adventures and escapades, and it's very funny. To give you an example, the first episode is he is tasked with reviewing stealing, addiction, and going to prom. So he starts stealing stuff, and then he gets addicted to cocaine. And then he has to find a teen to ask to prom. There's also an episode where he gets tasked with eating a dozen pancakes, divorcing his wife, and then eating 30 pancakes. So it's really great show. Actually. Those are both shows that I highly recommend. That I think anybody who likes What We Do in the Shadows for the comedy aspect of it, less than the supernatural aspects of it. And I would really love to see any of the people involved with those shows on this show, especially Andy Daly is an incredibly talented comedian.
Oh, performer. Yeah. Oh, I love him.
Yeah, he's so funny. He's on Comedy Bang Bang. He's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I think I don't remember if there's another comedian also with the last name Daly as well.
John Daly.
And
yes.
I feel like maybe he was in an episode this season. I feel like he might have been in one, and I don't remember. Deanna, you might have Google in front of you. John Daly.
I don't think so. He was on Curb Your Enthusiasm this season.
Yeah, I did know he was. I saw that he was on. I don't watch the show, but I saw that he was on this season of Curb. But I would love to see him in the show. And obviously, him and Nick Kroll have done tons of stuff together. So yeah,
Kroll show is great. Also.
Yeah, I would love. Deanna, is there anyone you could think of that you'd want to see in the show?
I'm glad you guys gave me a little time to think about this, because I had no idea who I would have wanted to see. But I was kind of going through like the work that Taika and Jermaine have done to see who they might know who would be game to do this. And I think it would be very interesting to have Dan Stevens on this. He was the lead in Legion, which Jermaine Clement was on. And then Taika obviously knows Marvel people. Yeah. So I would not be disappointed with the Chris Hemsworth cameo.
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Well, now he's now done some of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. Oh,
and he's doing another Thor movie. He worked on Mandalorian season 1, and he's also doing a Star Wars movie. So really, the potential there is really endless.
He's got, exactly. Especially if the show keeps. I mean, we're very lucky that it got renewed for a 3rd season. Clap, 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 clap! Hooray!
Yeah, that's great. So I'm glad.
There's I'm very excited for that, and so I don't know how long they can make this funny. If 3rd season is anything like 2nd season, I could see it going for a little bit. you know, as long as it stays funny and fresh and they keep changing. I mean, like, they've shown that it's absurd, just like the movie.
Absolutely.
It can be just as absurd, if not more absurd than the movie. Yeah. So that gives them a lot of wiggle room to do interesting stuff with the show.
And I think that the tone of it has sort of shifted. Like, I feel like the tone of the movie is a lot more of that, because it's all it's those three it's like the New Zealand guys. So I'd say it's closer to like Flight of the Conchords, where they all have such a drab, like deadpan delivery of all their lines. But this show has kind of leaned into like the cartoonishness and the insanity of the like wackiness of these characters a lot more so than they did in the movie. So it's kind of given the show like a much like a more lively like tone to it, I guess, even though there is literally a character who is an energy vampire. But yeah, I think it's definitely found its footing, and it definitely is going to I feel like it's hitting. I could really feel like it was hitting its stride this second season, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it going forward, especially because I feel like a lot of sitcoms either don't really find their audience or never quite get to, it takes them a while to get to where the show is already now.
Yeah.
And
they've done it so quickly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for it to go to be like a stronger show for FX, especially going forward. I don't know like how the Hulu stuff and how the Disney stuff really affects it, but I really hope that they keep making it, because it really feels like it has found its stride, and that there's only I have total faith in them going forward.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even mind, you know, I'm also a fan of like concise amounts of seasons. So like 4 to 5 seasons, I'd be happy with that. You know, if it made it to 4 to 5 seasons, like I'd be happy with that, because I think anything more, it can like go on a little too long. But,
for sure. Yeah. Sitcoms, it's hard for them to, as we have even seen in the first 2 seasons, like it's hard. Sometimes it's hard for them to, like, as they go on, the jokes have to increase in like craziness and silliness, and it kind of can lead to the show sort of becoming detached from like all reality and consequence. Like I feel like that happens very much in like 30 Rock is a classic example of, just as the show goes on, it just turned into like a total cartoon. And then you saw like those creators then made Kimmy Schmidt, which absolutely leaned into that. So I think, it's definitely hard for shows to maintain a lot of that. I think the better shows that do it would be like Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
Which were really able to find their stride pretty late or pretty early, and just kind of ride it out and work on their formula for how they put characters together. But I think this show has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see where they go with it.
Yeah. Deanna, is there anything? I feel like we've covered it all.
It took me a little while to get into this, so it was one of those things where, Jonathan, like you, I was kind of like, oh, is this gonna be something I don't end up liking at all? And then I was like worried I was going to disappoint you guys if I didn't like it. But it took me, I want to say, like a good 6 or 7 episodes to really get into it. And I think a lot of that has to do with, because of the fact that I didn't like the episodes that focused on like Colin Robinson's office life in the first season. And then once they started digging into the characters more and giving them stuff to do beyond just being roommates, and it seems like Colin is the only one who has a job, obviously, because he can go out during the day but the others can't, so they are always dressed in sort of their vampire garb, whereas Colin Robinson just looks like this everyday normal white dude. And you really just get a sense for the characters, and then they get to let their uniqueness shine in different episodes in season 2, like when Guillermo goes off and he leaves and he's trying not to be a vampire slayer. And you have Naja, who is putting a ghost in a doll and befriending a doll. And then you have that like talent show episode where her and Laszlo just go and perform, and they destroy really the crowd songs. And then they finally do a song that gets them on their side. And it's just so wild how different all of their personalities are, that I think with season 2 they really did a much better job of highlighting those qualities in all of the characters. But yes, do we have favorite episodes? I think we can wrap up with this because it's kind of hard to pick just one.
Well,
yes. I would probably say, I mean, those three that I mentioned earlier, the chain letter, the episode, the curse, Colin's promotion, or the Jackie Daytona episodes are, I think, the strongest three that they've done. I also totally forgot about this and wanted to bring it up because I thought it was very funny in the first season. One running gag is that Nadja has this lover that is reincarnated like multiple times and always brought to her and always decapitated. And in his current form, he's like a parking attendant in New York whose name is Jeff, and she cannot, for the love of God, pronounce his name. So she's like calling him like Jess, and just her flirtation and her romance with him is very, very funny, a very funny plot point. But yeah, I would say probably of those three episodes, let's just go with the chain letter one is incredible. Just a perfect premise, a perfect execution.
I'm gonna say same thing. Chain letter episode.
Yeah.
That was definitely a highlight, and I don't know. It's very hard to pick just one, but it's definitely one from season 2 for me, and I think it might even be the one where Guillermo leaves and you see everything just goes to hell in the house. There's dead bodies everywhere.
The newest one?
The finale or the it might have been either the finale or the penultimate, but I'm pretty sure it's the finale where they get
I
invited.
think it carries over into the finale when Guillermo comes back and he sees all the dead bodies on the ground, and then he realizes they've been invited to this thing that's a trap, and he just goes crazy and slays all of the vampires, and they're like, Guillermo, do you have something to tell us?
But then they like talk shit at him at the end.
She's like,
they say something, but it's so funny.
He's like, I am Guillermo de la Cruz, I'm a vampire hunter, and they're like, well, yeah, but we had to go get our dry cleaning.
Yeah. It was
they're like, don't care. Such a stupid show. It's so good. Please watch it if you haven't. I don't know why you would listen to this episode if you haven't, but if you haven't, please watch it.
And it's funny because like the penultimate episode is when they're taken by the witches, and then you have this whole thing where, you know, Colin Robinson is taking credit for something that Guillermo did, even though Guillermo wasn't really into staying at the house or anything at the time, and it rolls over into the finale, which was just so entertaining. I was like, okay, they ended season 2 on a high note, and like you guys were saying earlier, I think season 3 has a lot of potential, but I don't want this show to drag on too long. And I'm not someone who watches a ton of comedies, but I know there are plenty of other shows I've watched, like Dexter, where you're just like, you went 3 seasons too long, buddy.
Weeds. Orange is the New Black. Like, there's so many that went on way too long.
I think this needs to have like a Good Place exit.
I think FX is a pretty smart network, more so than a lot of other ones where, I mean, they do have It's Always Sunny. They do have It's Always Sunny, which is on its like 14th season, but I think people still like it, right? Like it's still good, right? Do we hate it? I don't know. I've never watched it.
Yeah, I know people still watch it. I do.
Yeah, so that would be kind of the only thing that they've had for like a really long time. But I feel like the other shows that have been on FX that I've really liked, they have been very smart about keeping them, like ending them on high notes. Like I would point to like You're the Worst, ended on a very high note.
Was Legion on FX? I think that did the same thing.
It was.
Legion had like what, 3 seasons, 2 or 3 seasons?
Legion had 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Man Seeking Woman is also another incredible comedy.
That was such a great show. I love that show.
Great show.
And
went out on a very high note.
3 seasons, I think.
3 seasons. So I mean, if there was like network TV kind of makes me nervous, and some of the other channels kind of make me nervous, but I don't know. I kind of trust FX at this point.
Yeah, I think it could go 4 or 5 seasons. Like it could.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
4 or 5 seasons, and that would be great. So.
Yeah, sure.
Especially because they aren't doing like 20 episode seasons like a lot of your ABC, Fox, CBS comedies will do. So they're definitely keeping things tight, and it allows for the show to not have a ton of filler episodes, which is nice too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they aren't wasting the film.
Yeah. The shorter seasons definitely make it a lot tighter, and it gives them a whole year to only have to write 10 years. And who even knows, like right now with COVID and everything, like how that's going to affect their they probably are in the best position because they probably, since they put it out, so their process wrapped right before COVID happened, they probably have the most time avoiding it and will come into an industry that has already started, because there are many other shows that would have to have restarted production before them. So they probably are in the best position for that. I don't know.
Yeah, and they are starting production on stuff again. So
yeah,
with caution. So yeah, we could see.
I think this film's in like the fall, definitely, because it definitely seems very cold and snowy and nighttimey when they're filming it. So
yeah,
we'll see. I'm sure they've already like written, or they already are writing season 3. So, but yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on to talk about What We Do in the Shadows, season 1 and 2. I'm sure you will both be back for season 3 or season 3 and 4, depending on how we decide to lump them.
Thank you for having us.
I'm getting a call.
Perfect.
So I guess I'll see you guys later.
All right, everyone, that does it for this episode of Welcome to Geekdom. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so through our Patreon. You can sign up for $1 a month. That'll get you a thank you on the show. $2 a month, you get to pick a topic that myself and a guest will discuss on the show. For $5 a month, you can join the Welcome to Geekdom Slack group, where you can talk to myself and various guests who have been on the show. If you want to follow us on socials, you can do so at GeekdomPod on Twitter and at Welcome to Geekdom on Instagram and Facebook. If you feel inclined, please do give us a review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. It really does help the show. And as always, thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.